Hi friends, welcome back. If you haven't heard me talk about this 100 times, I've been traveling, so this video is coming out, just a week late, but I think that's fine. I made up with it with all the bonus content I've been putting out, so I hope you've enjoyed that. But we're gonna jump straight into it, although I do wanna warn you, you'll wanna hang around to the last part of this video because I talk about one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen, content-wise, a TV show that is, the most disturbing thing ever. So it's a mini-series, and if you're into true crime, and you don't mind being completely shocked, you'll want to hang around for that. But let's jump into what I watched this month. Let's start with the movies. If you don't know, I'm using Letterboxd, which is an app that's always linked down below. God, it feels like a long time ago, but the first film I watched of the month was The Conjuring. I was doing a little rewatch of all of the Conjuring films before I watched The Nun, and I did a comprehensive back catalogue on that for you all so that you wouldn't have to do what I did because there's a lot to it. I kind of appreciated this, I have to say, a lot more this time watching it. I think I was just like looking for something fun, and I had just watched all of the Insidiouses before this, I believe, and it feels like such a long time ago. And so in comparison, I kind of like was enjoying the whole Patrick Wilson revisit. After that, I watched The Blob. I watched this as a Patreon hangout, I believe, and this is the remake. I've watched it before, but The Blob doesn't really feature in much of the film. This looks really sick though, but also it really mirrors for me Killer Clowns from Outer Space, like some of the story of that, and I'm a huge fan of that, so I wasn't that impressed this time around. And then you can see my Conjuring 2, The Nun, and The Nun 2. I have my thoughts on The Nun 2 up if you want to check that out. But yes, I was just recapping everywhere The Nun was kind of featured. And it's really interesting because now I've seen this from different perspectives and especially different interpretations of the films. And people always talk about the Crooked Man, and now I follow this kind of belief that the Crooked Man is and has always been the Nun or Valak. I know that there is slightly different interpretations of that, but I think it's really interesting that people talk about the Crooked Man having a spin-off because technically it is Valak who possessed that house. Anyway, moving on. Perpetrator. This is a film starring Alicia Silverstone, and it honestly it featured her a lot more than I thought it would. It's about a girl who moves and she has to go live with her estranged auntie, and when she's there, she discovers how her life will change on her 18th birthday. It's a very supernatural film. I saw a lot of people actually liked this, like I've seen online, but I did not enjoy it at all. I thought it was very messy, and I did a whole review on it for my patrons. It had really cool elements, but I felt like it was all based around setting up these like really cool sequences, but there was no actual linking story. And I just found that the visuals were way cooler than anything else going on. It didn't really have any flow to it. The next film I watched was The Comfort of Strangers. I forget something happened this day. I can't remember. Oh, I remember now. I did a 12-hour live stream on Twitch. If you're not following me on Twitch, you probably should. If you like horror gaming and want to hang out with me very casually, it's usually only about like 20, 30 people. We all hang out, we have fun. It is a different vibe. And after I did a 12-hour stream, which was kind of a challenge, I went to bed and I just sat in silence and watched this film. And this film was so fucked up. Someone actually recommended this to me, one of you guys who watched, so thank you so much. I was gonna put it in a disturbing video that I did after this, but I just didn't know how much my audience as a whole would enjoy it. But for those listening, it is a very slow burn and a very peculiar situation. It's kind of like, I wouldn't say it is like Funny Games, but it's the same kind of vibe where this thing just gets out of hand really quickly and you are screaming and feeling frustrated. It's this very strange story about a couple who go on a holiday in Venice, and they have a very modern relationship, which is such a shitty way of putting it, but they have a modern relationship. They don't define things as strongly as other people, and they meet this couple, and this couple is just something is off, and it's about them being trapped kind of in this situation that they don't realize how deep in they are. It's a very strange movie. I would say it's like Funny Games meets Eyes Wide Shut, but very slow, and you really have, I think it's a really long film too, by memory. Oh, no, it's not actually. Since it's 107 minutes, but you really had to dedicate a lot of time and be interested in the details for the payoff to work, but I enjoyed it. So yes, I then watched Disconnect. I think I talked about this in that disturbing video that I was talking about. This was a really interesting film about, when it's several different people's story that intertwine. And this is especially about being online and the way we communicate online. But I know back in 2012, which unfortunately and strangely that it's changed dramatically since then. I mean, it's been over 10 years, but yeah, it has changed dramatically since then. And some of the scenes in this film, the climax moments, are just terrifying, and they're beautiful, but they're really scary because you don't know where things will go. And it's interesting, I guess, this movie paired with the last movie, it's all about how erratic humans can react, and I find that quite scary. So I really enjoy this one. It's more of a thriller drama. It has some really good actors in it and some really interesting scenes and all of their stories crossing over. So if you like films that focus on different strangers and how they connected, that's one for you. I then watched Little Children. This is a film that I've seen before, but I just wanted to revisit it. It is such a beautiful film. Again, Patrick Wilson, and we got Kate Winslet, and it's about these two people who meet in this town, and they deal with their own struggles with raising their young children, but they also deal with this sex offender that's also within the suburb. It's like this whole tangled story about relationships and, again, communication and the breakdown of that, and again, also defending children. The film has a lot of nuance to it. It's very dangerous, like the lines that are towed, and it's just super interesting. If you're into a whole lot of character development and insight, and you're very open-minded, this one is interesting. I'm not saying you're open-minded in like a weird way at all. I'm just saying you've really got to stick with it because it takes you down some strange avenues. But I think it's a beautiful story and really interesting and really haunting and really scary and really gross at times. But I really love challenging relationships, especially between obviously Kate Winslet and Patrick Wilson in that one. It's a great performance. I then watched House of the Devil. I didn't realize how many people were split on this. I watched this with my patrons. Someone chose this, and a lot of people did not like it, which I remember really liking this film, and I can see a lot of people's points when we usually talk about it afterwards, and I could see a lot of people's points with why it just didn't work for them. But for me, it has like a strange nostalgic feel, which I guess isn't strange at all because it's based in like the 70s, 80s. It looks like that very much so. It's a Ty West film. It's got Greta Gerwig in it, but it's this story. It's like a babysitter story. It's very slow. It's about the dramatic build-up. It's about the atmosphere, and there's not really much else to the story, but I find it quite creepy, and I think of it as like a low-budget kind of like independent, strange film. I just really like that creepy feeling. This is like more of those films that you chuck on late night and you want to get that creepy atmosphere, but you don't have to always be paying attention, which I guess is not saying the best for it, but I still really enjoy that one as a strange Ty West entry. I watched The Best Offer. This is a very interesting film. I think, again, one of you guys recommended this one to me. I don't remember how this came across. This is a twisted, almost like a Spanish thriller, but it's not Spanish. It's got that vibe. It's the story of this art dealer, and he goes to assess this person's property, and he becomes infatuated with this woman who lives there who has agoraphobia, whatever one it is when you're like scared to go outside. And it's just about like him trying to catch her and all this weird stuff, but then it plays into the art form, and it's got many layers. It's really well done. I didn't include it on any lists because it was more of a drama, but if you're into dramas with twists and turns, I wouldn't say it's thrilling, but I think it's a beautiful and interesting watch, and I don't want to say too much more because it has a really good, it's twisty. So if you like your twisties, check it out. Barbie. This is the second time I saw Barbie. I had to see it one more time before it left the cinema, and I had to take my husband. I love Barbie, and I've spoken about it before. I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. It just brings me so much joy. And I was sobbing the second time because I knew it was coming. I can't talk about Barbie. Let's not talk about Barbie anymore. On my quest to find disturbing films that I had not seen, I watched Young Adam. This is a fucking weird film with Ewan McGregor and Tilda Swinton, and it's got Emily Mortimer, and it's a weird ass story about this man who lives on a boat with this couple and how he crosses the line every single time. Again, it's very twisty. It has like a very solid ending, and you think the whole film, you're like, where is this going? And then you're like, oh. So it's kind of like one of those films where I would say watch it, but I kind of have to warn you that it's just a dramatic story about this awful man. It's just a very strange, again, relationship crossing all the boundaries movie that is considered to be disturbing, but it's just a very strange film. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest. I would recommend it to anyone who likes dramas and they don't mind wading through to get to an interesting story that they may have not seen before, but I wouldn't say it's extremely unique at the same time. It's just a very strange pairing, as you can see right here with Ewan McGregor and Tilda. Like, it's just I've seen the poster for this a lot, but I never knew what it was about, and now I know. I kind of know why I didn't know. Not saying I didn't enjoy it, but it kind of does creep me out a little bit. It's a very sexual movie and it exposes just strange facets of humans, which makes me feel very uncomfortable, which I think is probably the point. I watched 8mm. This was a rewatch. I haven't put it down as a rewatch, but I did watch this, I think when I was like really young, like 18. Oh my gosh. This is Nicolas Cage, who gets into this, he's like a detective and he gets into this insane situation where it's put on him to figure out if this movie is a snuff film or not. It's a very funny, it's not funny at all, but it's a very interesting situation how they like tee it up, and I think it works quite well. A lot of people don't like Nicolas Cage for Nicolas Cage, and if you're one of those people, you won't like it because it is Nicolas Cage, but I actually enjoyed this film. I love me a good 90s crime thriller, and this one really scratches that itch, and it doesn't really show anything. So it's like disturbing through just the idea of what it could be. I mean, you do see some things, but it definitely rides on the back of being so ambiguous that your brain could go anywhere with what you hear. It's also got Joaquin Phoenix in it, which is... he's really very different in this film, and I mean, he's different in everything he does, but I really like this one. If you like 90s crime and you don't mind Nicolas Cage, you will like it. If you don't like Nicolas Cage, it's Nicolas Cage acting, okay? I can't give you that much more than that. Under Your Bed. This one, oh my god, this film, I wanted to love it. It's got some really interesting parts. This is a crazy Japanese film about a man who becomes obsessed with this girl that he goes to school with, and he follows her through, well, he finds her later in life, and then he becomes obsessed with her once again, and she's in this really bad situation, and so he kind of like, sorry, I just got a comb here. He kind of weasels his way in really disgusting ways. I thought because it says Under Your Bed and the film kind of starts with him under a bed, I thought it was going to be more like Sleep Tight, if you've seen that film, which is a insane Spanish horror thriller. I thought it was going to be very similar to that, but it's really not. It's very complex. It's a very journey movie. It's over several years. It's got, again, nuances to the characters and the situations. It's not straightforward, but it's a super interesting journey film, but I think that it just, with its lack of direction or precise direction, it kind of falls a little bit flat when it has something really interesting going on. I feel like it doesn't take full advantage of that, but it's a very interesting film, and I probably still would recommend it to those who like disturbing stuff. After that, I watched Polytechnique, which I talked about. This is a very sad film, and I'm so sad I had to watch this for a second time. I never thought I'd see this again, but I always try and rewatch things that I'm not too solid on, just so I know they fit certain video ideas, and this again was going in my disturbing video list that I did recently. This is based on a true story that happened in Canada about a mass shooting. Film is phenomenal because it is shown in black and white. It doesn't name any of the perpetrators, and it was done this way because they didn't want to show blood and they didn't want to give recognition to anyone who was part of the horrific acts. It was also screened to the victims' families before it went out. It's a film that's meant to be shocking, but it's also meant to be brutally raw and portray exactly how people felt in a more documentary type style way instead of being a dramatic film, you know, a fictionalized version. So I really am impressed with the way it's put together, but it is a really hard watch, as you can imagine, with the subject matter. Good Boy. This one, this is such a funny film. So this film, I talked about this in like What's Coming to VOD, and this is a Norwegian bizarro film about a woman who goes on a date with a man, and then when she realizes that he has a different aspect to his life, and that's that he lives with a dog who is a person in a suit. And this is not a spoiler. I thought that they were going to reveal this in such a grand way, even though it's on the trailer, it's on the poster. There's so much more to this story, and it's more about their relationship between them, and his whole background, which is really interesting because he is like this millionaire. She is this rough around the edges kind of woman, and she shows up late to the first date, and it's just this really weird kind of modern, I don't want to say fairy tale because it's definitely a horror movie, but this modern story. And it had a few, I don't want to say too much, but it had a few more surprises in it than I was expecting, and I really enjoyed how that came around. And I think for that, it's worth watching as an independent film. After that, I watched What Lies Beneath. I watched this on the plane, by the way. These from here on, it's like plane content. I had seen this earlier in my life, and I always thought that this was like a pretty big classic thriller. I love Michelle Pfeiffer, by the way, but this movie is not great. I don't know why. I just thought it was like one of those movies that would scratch an itch, and I'm very aware that, you know, it's not trying to be anything special. It does scratch a little itch because of Michelle Pfeiffer, but that's kind of it. It is a story about a husband and wife in a house, and then she believes that the neighbor, something fishy is going on, and her neighbor, the wife, is in trouble, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. And something weird is also happening in her house at the same time. Is she haunted by the ghost? Could it be the ghost of the dead lover next door? It's a lot of Michelle Pfeiffer running around a house going, which I love, but I did want it to end. It went for 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes. I rated it 3, which I actually think is quite generous. Not as good as I remember. Not as good as I remember. After that, I watched Happiness for Beginners. I just wanted something easy to watch. I was getting to that point on the plane already, which is very sad. It was only probably a couple hours in. It takes me 30 hours to get to Orlando. Not just one flight. There's 3 different flights and layovers and all that. So this was a rough journey for me, but I tried to watch something that was going to be easy. This film was almost too predictable, which is my issue. So it's a story of a woman who's getting a divorce. Ellie Kempner? Is that her name? Kemper? She's getting a divorce. Her character in the film is getting a divorce, and she goes on this hiking retreat, and there she meets up with a man that she used to know when they were younger, one of her younger brother's friends, and it's about them and their whole, you know, group of new friends, and everyone going through something, and everyone struggling in their different ways and how they overcome that. It's meant to be a cute, funny, romantic comedy. It was very on the nose. I guess it was an easy watch, but to me it felt like a little bit of toxic positivity. So I don't know, I kind of wanted it again to be over, but it's cute and it served its purpose. I think that I just wasn't the core audience for it. After this, I watched a really interesting film called Angel Baby. This is a very strange Australian drama film that is very, very intense. It's about 2 people who have schizophrenia, or really a whole group of people who have schizophrenia and other mental health issues, and 2 people meet and they want to have a baby together. There are problems with them trying to raise and, you know, have the idea of having a family the way they want to have it, and trying to make ends meet and live in a world that is really against them being together. It's a very intense film. It shows you everything. It can be gruesome at times. There's just a lot. There's a lot of ground that they cover within this film. And it's a really sad film. I found it really sad but really honest and vulnerable. And it's a journey. It's a journey. It says an extraordinary story of love's transcendent power. 2 schizophrenics meet during therapy and fall in love. Unfortunately, they're on a road to nowhere. So it's a very tragic story. Kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of Candy, if you've seen the Australian drama Candy with Heath Ledger and Abby Cornish. It reminds me a lot of that, but just completely different again, because that's about addiction and this one's about mental health. But still same kind of idea about a love story within, you know, completely different perspectives. So I wouldn't say I loved the movie as much as I loved the idea of it. And after that I watched Bring It On, which I had not seen in years, and this movie did not age well. If you've seen it lately, you know what I'm talking about. It's still really funny, but there's a lot of stuff that is very not cute in it. Then I watched Bottoms. Woo! I was in America and I watched Bottoms because this is not out in Australia yet. It's still not out, so I was really excited to watch this. This is such a wild story, and I'm so glad. I went with my friend Danny, and I'm so glad that she told me before we saw it that it was like based in like an alternate reality almost, because it is a very strange movie to get a grip on, and we were like a couple minutes late going to the cinema. So I was glad that I had that introduction, because otherwise it's a very confusing movie. It's a very tightly scripted. The dialogue is slick. It's funny. It's like satire coming from, the call is coming from within the house. It's about two gay women who enlist a bunch of people from their school into a fight club. And they just want to punch hot chicks. And it's like wrong in all of the right ways intentionally, and I just thought it was funny. It's very strange, but they really don't care about offending anyone, and they go all the way. And I just love any self-aware content like that. And it's actually kind of a horror movie because the end is very brutal. I would think of this film as like the quintessential She's All That, but flipped on its head. So the whole story in American high school, but it's taken the mickey out of that and flipped it around and changed a lot of different perspectives. So I really enjoyed that. From that, I watched It Lives Inside. I did a review, a Come With Me review with Vicky, Nightmare Maven, if you want to watch that on my channel. I didn't like this film, and so many other people loved this film, so that made me really sad. And I really wanted to like this film, but it felt really stale, and there was no real chemistry going on. There was a bunch of other issues, but if you want to watch the video, it's all in there. And then the last film of the month, I was in Disney. I went to Disney World, I went to all the Disneys, and I made my husband watch Sword in the Stone because he'd never seen Sword in the Stone, which is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. I love Sword in the Stone. If you haven't seen it, it's not what you think. It's a story about this kid who has this fate that's undetermined. Of course, there's a sword and a stone, so you can figure out what happens, but he meets this wizard called Merlin who tries to teach him like lessons of life and turns him into all these crazy creatures, and it's all about magic, and it's very lighthearted and silly and nonsensical. It's not really like any of the other Disney movies, I think. And I can't tell you how disappointed I was when I did my whole Disney experience in Orlando and there was nothing really about Sword in the Stone, because it's so important. It's so necessary. And even in Epcot, they had the whole UK area, and they didn't have anything. Did I miss something? I don't know. Anyway, I'm a little bit sour about that, but absolutely love this film. It's a treasure. It's so strange. I love it. And it was so magical watching it as an adult. Okay, now TV. I didn't watch too much TV, but I did watch Love and Death, which stars Elizabeth Olsen and is the story of, it's a story that we've heard a couple of different ways, and I didn't even realize that when I started watching it. It's the story of Candy Montgomery, who was in a true crime investigation within her community. I don't want to say too much unless you don't know the story, but it has been done before. It was done in a series called Candy, by Jessica Biel, and I think it's been done in some other movies as well, and I had no idea when I started this show what it was about, because it starts off as this insane story about her meeting Jimmy Plemons. He plays this character in her town, in her little community, and they're very religious folk, and they decide that they are attracted to each other and they want to do something about it, and they both are married. So it starts off with this strange story that lures you slowly down, and you have no idea where it's going. It kind of does, the flashback up to something terrible happening, and you know that there's going to be a terrible incident, but you're not really sure where it's going. So I really enjoyed the way the show kind of led you down that path, and I love anything Elizabeth Olsen does. I think she's just amazing, and she was so good at this character. I really enjoyed the show. If you don't know anything about it, I'd probably advise giving it a watch if you do like true crime, and if you like drama series, which I feel like the whole theme of September for me has been films that explore different interpersonal relationships and things that happen behind closed doors that we don't talk about usually, and there's been a lot of other things that have been very similar to this that I've watched this month. Yeah, just the same kind of themes. So I thought it was really enjoyable and interesting to see where it went, because Candy is such a complex character, and it was just really interesting seeing how she was portrayed. But I did promise you at the start, one of the darkest things I've ever watched, and I'm here to report. One of the most mind-boggling things I've ever seen in my whole life, I watched this month, and it's called The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. This is about a woman who came to America and is known as the real life orphan. If you've heard about, there's this case that happened that seemed like the real life orphan, this is the person they're referring to. But this is the most insane story you've ever seen, but not in the way that you're thinking, because there is a lot going on with the family that adopts her, and we get this insight into, because they kind of collapse under the whole pressure of what is happening with her and other things, and it becomes this strange documentary where part of the family are able to speak and presenting things in a very uncalculated way, but they think that they're being very calculated. I can't tell you, it is like gold on film, because these people are selling themselves down the river and they have no idea the way they're coming off. I've never seen anything like it. It's the same level as Tiger King. You know, when people are talking to a camera and you tell them you should be talking to a lawyer instead of doing this, because what you're saying is not okay. So the miniseries, it definitely starts on the case and what happened to her, Natalia Grace, which is horrendous. Everything is very confusing and horrendous, and she's gone through so much intense trauma through this, and that whole story alone kind of even separates at one point from her family story. So there's a lot of information. It's not just like this straightforward, she's bad, You really go back and forth, and there's just so much to the picture, and I found it to be incredibly disturbing. I would love to hear if any of you have seen it and what you thought. I definitely have strong opinions on this, and I don't want to say too much to give anything away, but wow. If you have not watched this show, you need to watch it, especially if you're a true crime buff, because it is eye-opening and disgusting and alarming, and just this awful event that no one is talking about. So I do highly recommend that if you like true crime, and especially if you like disturbing things. Just forewarning, it is real, so it is very disturbing. But that's everything I watched last month. If you want to check out what's coming up this month, there's a lot. So go check that out, and I've already done a bunch of videos, so if you'd like to check them out, I would love to have you come and hang out with me. But I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Stay safe and stay spooky. Bye, friends.